Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's time for another mock draft here on the Draft Dodgers. Coming up right after this. And we are back. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's your friend Dom C here with Project Prospect for another mock draft, another first round mock draft. It's championship weekend in college football. The draft is right around the corner. Everyone's starting to talk about it. Everyone's starting to buzz about it. It's time, folks. My favorite time of the year from now until April. Nothing but draft content 24/7, 365. I love it. I hope you do too. Before we get into bringing in our guest, let me take care of some housekeeping. Please, if you haven't done so, again, it's Project Prospect with Dom C. Hit the like, hit subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, leave some comments on the video. Let's get some friendly discourse going back and forth. Tell me what you like, tell me what you don't like. I'm a big boy, I can handle it. And you know what? Truth is, we're not going to agree about everything, and that's okay too. So I'm excited today. New guest, new co-host for this episode of the Draft Dodgers. And let me go ahead and bring up my friend, Mr. Bill Sparks. Bill, welcome to the Draft Dodgers, buddy.
Dom, thank you for having me on, man. I'm glad that we get a chance to do this. Conference championship weekend, like you hit on. This is the big swing of things. We start diving into this draft class, and it's a weird one. It's a weird one from years past. It's not top heavy in talent, but it goes deep into day three. There's some deep cuts in this class. Let me tell you what.
Yeah, I agree, and I'm glad he said that because it's not very top heavy, right? Like last year, I remember having well over 16, 17 first round grades on some of these guys, and as I'm getting through, again, I'm about 250, good breakdowns and scouting reports through. I don't have that many. I'm not up to 16 or 18 first round grades yet. Maybe I'll get there, maybe I won't. I doubt it at this point, but like you said, there's some positional groups that have a lot of depth. We talked about the running back group being really, really stacked this year. I like the tight end group. I like the interior defensive linemen. The quarterbacks are going to be hit or miss. I think, they're the names at the top that people like. And then there's some question marks. You don't know if some of these guys are going back to school. You don't know if they're going to come out. You don't know if they're going to be long-term prospects or projects, I should say. So it should be interesting. But before we get into anything, let me tell our fans, our watchers, our viewers, the ones who pay the bills, a little bit about Bill. Bill can be found on X at Sparks Scouting. He's a writer and an analyst for CageDraftRoom.com and the DraftProfessors.com as well. Anything else, Bill, that I'm missing? Because I know you do a whole heck of a lot of stuff. I see you all over social media.
No, you hit the nail on the head. You can find me on X at Spark Scouting, CageDraftRoom.com. I'm a writer and analyst for them. Draft Professor on YouTube as well. I work on the Mrs. Are Relevant podcast, which we just did an episode live tonight on the wide receivers and cornerbacks class. But you hit the nail on the head. I've got roughly 450 prospects on my big board right now. I go deep into these classes every year, and I've got 19 first round grades over 450 prospects. So this is a shallow class at the top, but there are going to be guys that are third, fourth round talent guys that you're going to see on day three, and teams are going to get some really good talent on the back end. But if you're picking at the top of this class, you've got some serious concerns about who you're going to go for.
Yeah. It could be one of those years where, you might not see a lot of movement, trading up into the top 10, top half of the draft because, after probably about the first 6 or 7, you pick number 10 might have the same value for a war room as pick number 35. So I don't know how much of that trading. So again, it's still early in December, still a lot of time, before April's draft. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of movement, but we are going to get into a full first round mock draft where Bill and I are going to alternate on, instead of odds and evens, we're going to do AFC, NFC. But since we're only doing one round, Bill, why don't you go ahead? Throw a name out there. Throw me the day 3 guy that that really caught your eye. A guy that's going to be round 4, 5, 6, somebody that you like that my fans and viewers can log in their memory banks.
Absolutely. So I'm going to give you a guy that is going to be a day 3 at the cornerback position.
Okay.
Devin Kirkwood from UCLA. I mean, this guy is 6'3", 205. He's got the long frame, the long arms that you want at corner. There's some mechanical issues. His back pedal's a little sloppy, and he doesn't do very well, especially in run support as far as technique goes, but it's things that are very easily coachable out of him. As a Browns fan, obviously, I see a lot of Martin Emerson Jr. in him. It's the same kind of the nitty gritty man zone coverage corner. You can put him on the boundary, you can put him in the zone, but there's not a lot of buzz on him because number one, he's at UCLA, which this season was a dumpster fire. To
Yeah, sure was.
Put it kindly. Number two, there are some concerns as far as positional value at 6'3", 205. My best bet for him, add on about 20 pounds of muscle mass and swap over to safety, but he could stick at corner. But that's a guy I would say that you're watching, especially in this corner class that's very, very deep. I mean, right now, looking at my big board, I have, let's see, roughly 53 draftable grades out of this cornerback class.
Mm-hmm.
So on average, you're looking between 25 and 30 that get drafted every year, sometimes more. But I mean, there's guys that are going to be had on day 3 that have a 3rd, 4th round grade. So especially corners, wide receivers is also deep this year. Running back is very deep and has a star at the top in Ashton Jeanty, who, as we record this, he's just lighting up UNLV like he's done all season. Yeah. And I agree with you. The interior defensive line, also edge, is sneaky good.
Yeah, the edge is good. The edge is, you know what? There's not that. I mean, depending on how you feel about Abdul Carter, I know he's the hot button topic name. You know, and people are either really in or just kind of like mad about him. But outside of that, there's no one that is definitive. There's no definitive top 10 guy, but there's tons of guys that can go between 15 and 50. Right. There's,
Absolutely.
There's probably about 6 or 7 of those guys. So the depth although the top end talent might not be there, I think you're going to get a lot of really good, NFL starting caliber edges well into day 2.
Absolutely. And what's weird is a lot of these edges are larger guys. They're not your small speedsters. I mean, yeah, you've got like your James Pierce's juniors that are athletic nightmares, but a lot of these bigger guys, Nick Scourton, Landon Jackson,
Shamar Stewart,
even other guys, they're up there in size and they're carrying their size well. That's what's crazy is a lot of these guys that are bigger, you would think bigger guys are going to be slower. There's some athletic freaks, and you hit it on the head with Abdul Carter. There's a lot of people that aren't high on him. I think once we get to the combine in Indianapolis, he is going to test through the roof.
Yeah, for sure.
He's going to be in play at number 1. I hate to say that because he's a 1st round grade for me, but I don't think he's a top 10 guy. But both him and Tyler Warren from Penn State, the tight end from Penn State, 6'6", 265, both of those guys are going to end up in the top half of the 1st round because they're just going to blow the roof off of Indianapolis at the combine testing.
Yeah, and my whole thing on Abdul Carter, like the twitchiness, the athleticism. I mean, the first step quickness, that bend, like everything you want in your prototypical pass rusher. I question how much of a 3-down player he can be early on because setting that edge and playing the run isn't his forte. He wasn't asked to do it a lot. Coming from off ball, really being his first year playing the edge, being a true pass rush edge. There's going to be some growing pains in terms of seeing him on the field early downs and whatnot. So I don't know. I just have a problem. I'm not gonna, again, not knocking the guy's talent. I'd be thrilled if my Jets, ended up with him, but it taking a guy that in the top 5, top 10 who might not really be a 3-down player right off the bat is not an easy pill to swallow for some NFL GMs, for sure.
No, absolutely not. And I think the other side of the other side of the trenches, the offensive line, that's probably the worst position group of this class.
Yeah.
There is a lot of guys that are tackles now. They're going to be guards at the next level.
I was talking to somebody about that on another show that I was a guest on, and I was saying the same thing. I said, when you have, your top 5 tackles in this class, and you said,
Mhm.
well, I'm not sure if they're really going to stick at tackle. They might go into guard. To me, that's a red flag and tells you it's probably not the strongest class in the world. And I think you can justifiably say that with most of these guys.
Yeah, I mean the top guy, Will Campbell. He not only does he not have the arm length to stick outside a tackle, but he gets beat way too easily on his outside shoulder. It happens more often than we care to admit.
Yeah.
My second tackle on the board is Jonas Avanea, and he's going to play right tackle. He's not going to slip over to the left side.
Yeah, I wouldn't
But
be surprised if Salvanea moves inside the guard either.
Yep.
I mean, I think he could be a good tackle. I think he could be serviceable. But I think he could be a really, really good guard. Reminds me a lot, if you remember last year's cycle, Brennan Coleman, who ended up sticking at tackle for, drafted in the third round, sticking at tackle for Washington. But I remember saying the same thing about him, is that I thought he could probably be a serviceable tackle. I think he'd be a really good guard. And here we go. Dominic Pooney from San Francisco, out of Kansas, another one. And he moved inside, and he's been an absolute dog walker inside, playing right guard for them over there.
Yep, absolutely. When I look at Savanea, the big thing on my scouting report, I wrote it down, and it's the best way I compare him. If you ever see him fighting a bear in the forest, help the bear. The man has power for days, right?
Yeah.
I compare him to like an Elijah Vera Tucker for the Jets.
Yeah.
Vera Tucker did the same thing at USC. He played outside on the tackle, on the edges.
Yeah.
He can slip out there if you need him to, but he's going to be a better guard at the next level. And when you talk about this tackle class, those are two of the top guys. There's some serious concerns. And if you're in need of an offensive tackle, the top half of this draft, it's just not there.
Yeah.
It's just not there this year.
Yeah, the big catch with Vera Tucker, again, knowing him pretty much, knowing him and watching him play for the past few years, he was left tackle in college, but he's got sub 32-inch arms, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and that just doesn't play very, unless you're an elite athlete. That just usually doesn't play there. Rashawn Slater was able to do it 32-inch arms. He's probably twice as good of an athlete as Vera Tucker is, and so you got some of those guys. And we'll talk about them a little bit as we get into this first round. So why don't we get this thing kicked off, man?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's dive in.
Yeah, we are going to be using the PFF mock draft simulator. I got everything set up. I got all the teams. I got one round. We're going to start off, and it's going to be no trades, folks, if you're watching this. And as I said before, please feel free to get in the comments. Tell us the picks that you like, that you didn't like, and we'll start it off. And Bill, you have the honors with Jacksonville Jaguars.
All right. So Jacksonville Jaguars have a couple big needs. Obviously, left tackle is not as big a need with the Walker Little re-signing, but it is still a need along that offensive line, especially in depth. But in this case, Jacksonville is in a scenario where they just need the best player available, and that's Travis Hunter. The question is now, do you draft him as a cornerback or as a wide receiver? I think he's a cornerback that plays wide receiver snaps because that's significantly easier to draw up and scheme up. And I don't trust this current coaching staff to do that, let alone a new rookie head coaching staff if they bring him on. So I think he'll probably be their top corner and then maybe some slot snaps as a wide receiver. But Jacksonville's in a position where it's just got to be the best player available.
Yeah, and this is a spot I think that you can easily probably come April or come mock drafts as us, analysts do them later on, where maybe you drop down a spot or two. Maybe, the Raiders or the Giants or the Jets or whomever is that quarterback hungry team really wants to go up and get their pick of the litter. So, but you're right. I think Travis Hunter is the best player in this class. I think he's an elite level athlete. He's got ball skills for days. The way he can click and close on the outside. I mean, I absolutely adore Travis Hunter. So yeah, that's the pick. And you're back up on the clock with the Raiders since you got the AFC guy.
All right, I love it. So with the Raiders, the biggest need is quarterback. I mean, last year they were sitting there at 13 thinking they were going to get one of the guys, and then 6 go in the top 12, and they're standing there with hands in the pockets. So they got to go get their guy this year. There's 2 guys that we talk about in the top 10 of this quarterback class. It's Cam Ward and it's Shedeur Sanders. I think Cam Ward is QB1 for me. He's been QB1 for me for a while for Washington State. But I've also since predicted that Shedeur Sanders is going to be the pick here for Las Vegas. I think Tom Brady and Shedeur Sanders' relationship in the offseason can't be understated. That's a huge connection there.
Mm-hmm.
And I also think that there is a high chance that Deion forgoes coaching at Colorado, even though he says, hey, I'm going to stay here, to take a spot on the Las Vegas coaching staff, potentially as head coach. So I take Shedeur Sanders here. He's the best pure passer in this
Yeah,
class. He can layer the ball very well. He can throw the ball very well. He's not going to wow you in terms of athleticism. He can move in and around the pocket, but
yeah.
he thrives in structure, not out of it.
Yeah, I agree. And Shador Sanders actually graded out as my top quarterback in this class. Not by much. And if you like, or if somebody likes Ward better, it's not that big of an argument. It's, do you like a player who's got a little bit more gumption, a little bit more flash? If you do, that's Cam Ward. He's a little bit more risque. He puts the ball in harm's way a lot more. Shador Sanders, like you said, I love the way he uses the middle of the field. I love the way he throws his guys open. Not the strongest arm, not the best arm talent, but definitely an NFL arm for sure. Listen, you can't go wrong with either one. I think Shedeur Sanders has a little bit of a higher floor, protects the ball, doesn't put it in harm's way as much as Cam Ward. To me, it's really pick your poison. Whichever one of these guys that you like, you go and get. Because there's probably only two that are in discussion for this top 5 as we stand right here in early December. So I'm up with the Giants, and it makes my pick easy because I take the quarterback left.
Yep.
That the Raiders left by, and that's Cam Ward. Listen, like I said, I think he's got a much stronger arm. I love the aggressiveness that he plays with. Has a little too much of the turnover-worthy throws for my liking. He gets away with it in college. I don't know if he's going to get away with it as much in the pros. If he can tone down that hero ball, like I mean, it's not necessarily a comp, but like think of early career Brett Favre. That true gunslinger mentality. Like my talent is better than anyone on the field. I get a lot of that in Cam Ward. And a lot of it is good, man. The stuff he does, out of pocket, the improvising that he can do. He can make every throw on the field. He's athletic enough that he can hurt you with his legs, but he's not, necessarily a dual threat guy, to say the least. Like I said, I think he'll need to be toned down. We'll see who the Giants head coach is here. If Brian Dable survives another year, that could be a really, a good pairing. And Cam Ward's the easy pick for me. I'm not going to even talk about it much longer. I'll leave it up to you with the Patriots here at pick 4.
Yeah, no. And just to piggyback on your Cam Ward, my comparison for him, it's a throwback comparison. It's Dante Culpepper when he was with the Minnesota Vikings. That same athletic style, gunslinger, just sling it and trust my arm. But your pick of him landing with the Giants, Cam Ward to Malik Neighbors, that's absolute cinema.
Yeah, absolutely.
I can't disagree with that. So the Patriots here at number 4, they need a left tackle, obviously, but there is not one worth taking this high. We talked about it with this tackle class. I don't think there's a left tackle worth taking this high. So now you have to look at their other 2 big needs, and it's wide receiver and it's edge. I really would like to do a wide receiver here, but I think that they're either going to attack it in free agency, or this wide receiver class being as deep as it is, they can come back around in round 2 and get a guy. So I'm going to go to the edge, and I'm going to give them Abdul Carter from Penn State. He is my number 2 edge on my big board right now, and I think he's just going to blow the roof off of combine testing, and number 4 might be his floor when we get to April.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. Like I said, as we talked about before we started filming, there's no denying the athleticism and that first step and that twitchiness, and he's going to be he's going to have people drooling with the numbers and that Raz that he's going to be able to put up, that athleticism that jumps off the page. So if he can put it all together and become a true, well-rounded 3-down player on the defense, I think he's going to be a home run. So
absolutely.
Carolina, that's me. I'm up. Yeah. Wow. And so Carolina's an interesting one, right? Because do they really trust in Bryce Young? I'm not sure. I think he's been playing better of yet. I think Dave Canales is, doing a good job in his first year with a team that's kind of void of talent. You saw what they're coming from. Yeah. You saw what they're coming from. I don't know if there's a quarterback that I'm comfortable here taking at 5. If there was, it might be in consideration for me. I think Carolina's going to be really upset that Abdul Carter's off the board. But like I said, there's a bunch of different ways that you can go here. You can try to pair up another wide receiver and get some more weapons on the field. I mean, Jonathan Brooks is coming back, so you hope him back from that ACL injury that he suffered at the end of last year. So you have a little bit of running game. You want to get Xavier Legette some more help there. I don't know how much Adam Thielen has left in the tank. My whole thing here with the wide receiver class, again, I like the class, not very top heavy. Ted McMillan and is a weird fit if you ask me for what they already have on the offensive side of the ball, right? Because he's a big guy. He's not a true X. I mean, and they have an X anyway in Xavier Leggett, right?
Yeah.
They have Jatavian Sanders, who really plays that power slot more so than he does in line. And that's kind of the fit where I see Ted McMillan kind of, cutting his teeth and making a name here. So I'm going to go a little bit down the board and I'm going to take another edge player. Yeah, I'm going to take one that I think is a name that people probably aren't talking about now, but a guy that I think is going to really, really kind of take off and rise up the boards a little bit as we move on. And that's going to be Jalen Walker out of Georgia.
Ooh.
Now, he is not your prototypical edge player, kind of that hybrid linebacker star, can put his hand down in the dirt. But, at 6'3", 245 pounds, I think he's got enough chops where he can do everything. I think in that odd man front, that 3-4 defense, he can slide in there and play that outside linebacker, where if he's asked to drop off into coverage, he can as well. He's got the athleticism. He moves ridiculously well. He plays. He's got long arms and he uses that real good. But it's that constant motor that he has that I absolutely love. So I'm going to go ahead and take Jalen Walker. Again, maybe a little high now. Not a name that people are talking about a lot, but I think a guy that's going to rise up the boards as we get closer to draft day come April.
No, absolutely.
And that leaves you. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, you're fine. No, I agree with you. I have him playing linebacker at the next level, but like you said, I think he's an edge rusher. My comp for him is Patrick Queen with juiced up edge moves. So if Carolina gets that at pick 5, I think that's bang for your buck value.
Yeah, he's going to be a guy that he's that true. I mean, it's such a cliche word, but he's that true hybrid. He can do a little bit of everything. I think for me, I think just the aggressiveness and that that full bore motor that he plays with kind of smells to me like again, not comping, but like a TJ Watt style outside linebacker where he can do a little bit of everything. He's good enough to do a little bit of everything, but his forte is going to really be there getting at the pass rusher. So that's the pick I'm going to go with. That's the one I chose and I stand by it. Damn it.
Hey, so we'll stick with it. So
you're up with the Jets, man. You better be right.
Yeah. So pick 6 with the Jets. The Jets is a fun one because there's 2 paths that they can go down. If Aaron Rodgers doesn't return, this pick might have to be a quarterback. In my scenario, I'm going to say Aaron Rodgers returns for another season. So now I'm looking at 2 big needs. I'm looking either along the defensive interior or I'm looking at a second cornerback to play across from Sauce Gardner. In this case, I'm going to go with a guy who I think is probably one of the best players in this class overall, Mason Graham, the defensive tackle from Michigan. I mean, this guy is just every bit of a internal force along a defensive line. Reminds me, he's Chris Jones from the Kansas City Chiefs in that same mold, big body guy. He can push the pocket from a pass rusher perspective. He can be stout against the run. I think the Jets clearly need defensive help, even though they had some pieces along the defensive line and some pieces in the defense like Sauce Gardner, but they need to get a guy just to be a true star in the middle of that defense.
Yeah, and listen, it's a pick that you see regularly comped to mocked to the Jets, I should say. I will say this: I love Mason Graham, I do. I question the fit next to Quinnen Williams because I think both of them are really truly that 3 tech, push the pocket, get at the passer. I think that's really their forte. I wouldn't be upset with it again because we talked about the top of this draft not being so strong. So if you had to take your best player available and go make it fit, then there could be worse picks than Mason Graham. So
Right, absolutely, and that's the big question is how are you going to fit him with Quinn and Williams next to each other? I think the Jets, if they're still picking that high come the end of the season, at that point it's a best take the best player available, and we will figure out fits later, whether
yeah.
it's a rotational basis or you put them on the field together.
Yeah, yeah. And you're up for the next 2. So Tennessee.
Yeah. Tennessee. So Tennessee, the big need, obviously, it's going to depend on if you trust Will Levis as a quarterback or not. I still think that Brian Callahan, it's like Bryce Young in Carolina with Dave Canales. I think they're going to give him another year and come back in 26 when this quarterback class is projected to be a little bit stronger.
Yeah.
So now you're looking at either offensive line, which needs help in Nashville, or pass catchers. Again, the offensive line, hate to beat a dead horse, but it's not worth a pick here. So with that being said, I'm going to go with a guy at wide receiver you've already talked about a little bit, in Tet McMillan. A big body, got vines for arms. I mean, he can reach out and do all sorts of freaky things. He's got a zip code catch radius. Anything that's near him, he's going to go get. This my comp for him is like Mike Evans with freakishly long arms.
Yeah.
So now we come to my Cleveland Browns, and I'm
Dun,
sure
dun, dun.
I'm sure all of Browns Nation is watching. There's 2 guys, and I talked about it today. There's 2 guys that are on the docket if I'm Andrew Berry and the Browns GM, and they're both here. So now it becomes a fun conversation. So the first one is Ashton Genty, obviously, and folks are like, we can't take a running back in the top 10. Bijan Robinson went to Atlanta.
Yeah.
Ashton Genty's doing things that are unheard of this season for Boise State. And if anybody took him in the top 10, you wouldn't blink. That being said, there is another guy that's a better fit for Cleveland that I'm going to take here, and it's Luther Burden, the wide receiver from Missouri. He is my current wide receiver 1A. I go back and forth between him and Tet McMillan, but Luther Burden's just so electric with the ball in his hands. He can do it all. He can work out of the slot. He can work on the boundary, jet sweep, screens, kick return, punt return, anything you need of him. He's my comp for him is Percy Harvin all juiced up. And
I'm assuming you're not bringing Elijah Moore back or don't expect to. So there's going to be slot snaps that could be had.
Yes, that is 100%.
Yeah, I mean, you still have Judy there. You still have, oh my God, who's the other receiver from Tennessee?
You got Tillman. So yeah,
Tillman,
you have
Cedric Tillman.
Yeah, Judy and Tillman on the outside, and then Burden in the slot with David and Njoku. And then with as deep as this running back class is, you can get a guy on day 2 to help split snaps with Chubb while he gets back up to speed. And then that offense is just the question mark is at quarterback, whether you bridge with Jameis over the next couple of years while you get out from underneath Watson's contract, or you take a rookie in this class and figure that out. But that's a conversation for another day now that you got the weapons around him.
Yeah. And that leaves me up with the Saints, and I didn't expect it to be that hard of a pick. For me, I think, and I'm going to talk this out for a second because it's not going to be my pick. I want to go right to Will Johnson because they need to replace Marshawn Lattimore. They need to replace Paulson Adebo, who's walking and really had a really bad injury. So we don't know how healthy he's going to be. So you have the need there on the cornerback spot. With guys like Will Campbell here, though, it to me, it's kind of interesting. Now, could you play him at right tackle? Yes, I think you could. Do I think he'd be a better guard? Yes, I think you do. And is the defensive back or the interior lineman group is the interior line group here or the right tackle / guard group here deep enough where if I pass on a talent like Will Johnson, who's my number 2 player in the entire class, is it worth it? And for me, I think it's going to be. I don't think like I said, I like Will Campbell. I just think that there's guys that I'll be able to piece in there in rounds 2 and 3 that have that guard tackle flexibility. Whatever I'm looking, if I'm looking to replace Trevor Penning or find his replacement, or a guy that can bump inside while Trevor Penning plays one more year, so on and so forth. I don't know if you're going to find a guy with the upside of Will Johnson. Again, battled an injury this year, missed a lot of time. Last year looked like the best defensive back in college, next to Quinyon Mitchell, if you ask me. And I think that upside with such a weak room all around, depending on what happens with free agency, which, New Orleans is New Orleans. They're probably already $80 million over the cap trying to get into next year. So I'm sure they're not going to be very big into the free agent, into the free agent department, or at least at the high end of it. So why not take a high end talent when you have one? Will Johnson's a little bit, he's a little bit wiry. I think he can probably use to put on a couple pounds, and but I think he's not scheme specific. You can play him in off man or in zone. I think he can press up if he needs to press up. He's got ball skills. Like I said, very few blue chip players in this class. Will Johnson's one of them for me, so he's gonna be my pick for the Saints.
No, absolutely. That's a great pick. The big thing that you said about the injury, I question if there's even a legitimate injury. I talked about it earlier tonight on the Mrs. Irrelevant podcast with my co-host Randall Slifer, which you can go check over at the Draft Professor YouTube channel. I've looked everywhere and I can't see where this injury, what type of injury it is. Some people say foot, some people say ankle. And Randall and I speculated a little bit. I don't think there's an actual injury. I think this is just Michigan shutting him down for the season to protect his stock and just saying there's some sort of injury when it's probably something like a high ankle sprain at best. But
yeah, well, listen, from your mouth to God's ears, because what my whole thing was, and you're right, like it was very murky and very cloudy on really what happened. And I was hoping that they weren't trying to hide like a Lisfranc or something like that, which could really, it's a hard injury to come back from, especially for a guy who, needs his speed and that, agility and that flexion from the ground up, as much as a cornerback, an outside corner does. So listen, maybe you're right. And if that's the case, more power to him. I hope he comes in. I hope he tests healthy. I hope he, checks out healthy, and I hope he tests well.
Yep. No, absolutely. I think that's a great pick for New Orleans. I think with them being as so cap strapped as they are, you just have to start taking best players available and hope you get some cheap, solid homegrown talent.
Correct. Leaves you up with the Bengals, my friend.
Ooh, so this is a fun one. So the Bengals, obviously, if T. Higgins walks, this could be wide receiver. The defensive line, both edge and interior, needs help. But I'm going to throw a curveball. And I got a couple Bengals fans that follow me, one of them being at Parker Blake 60 on X. He's a very well-known offensive line guru, but he loves the Cincinnati Bengals. He'll probably chastise me for this pick, but I'm going to do it. Bengals are going to take Ashton Jeanty here at 10.
That's exactly who I would have taken for him. Exactly who I would have taken.
To give Joe Burrow a guy like Ashton Jeanty in his backfield, both as a pass catcher out of the backfield and in the run game, that's going to open up so many holes. And with as deep as this wide receiver class is, even if T. Higgins walks, you can come back in round 2 at the top and get a guy that is probably going to end up replacing T. But to get Ashton Jeanty here at 10 when he is my number 2 overall player in this class behind Travis Hunter, that's just excellent value you can't pass up on.
Yeah, and kudos to Chase Brown. I think he's having a phenomenal year, but I think he's still much more a compliment than a 3-down workhorse, if you ask me. So yeah, it's the pick I would have made too. Like you said, they're not in, the one thing the Bengals do, other than have a cheap owner. We all know how cheap he is over there, but they manage their cap well, so they'll have some room. Cincinnati and having Joe Burrow there is going to be an enticing opportunity for some of these free agent wide receivers. So even if T. Higgins walks, I think they'll be able to, kind of, if they don't have to address it here in the top 10, they'll be able to, plug in a number 2. And again, they got the kid, Andre Chevis from Princeton, who's, he is he a number 2? Probably not, but he could be a 2A or 2B, and you can draft another guy later. You can bring in a free agent to battle with him and put, Yeshevich in the slot or whatnot, whatever you want to do. I think there's I think this is to me the pick. So
Yeah.
kudos for getting it right, my friend.
No, absolutely. And we've seen two running back systems can thrive in the NFL. I mean, look at the Detroit Lions with Montgomery and Gibbs.
Yeah.
If your two running backs are Ashton Genty and Chase Brown is your complementary guy, I mean, that's a heck of a running back room to try to deal with for the AFC North, which as a Browns fan, I hate, but as a draft analyst, I have to 100% say is the best move.
Yeah. And it leaves me up with the Bears. I'm not going to think too much here. It's Will Campbell. He's going to slide into guard. Probably replace James Daniels. I think, like I said, could he play tackle? I do think he could play tackle. I love what he does as a true gap power style run blocker, and to me, that just lines up. With guard. Tevin, they're gonna have to make a decision on Tevin Jenkins. They don't really care for James Daniels too much. I think there's two spots there that need to be addressed and need to be filled. And why not take, arguably, in some people's the best offensive lineman in this class, and just find out where you want to play him. If it's at left tackle, it's at left tackle. If it's at left guard or right guard, it's at left guard or right guard. I think, I think he'll be able to handle either. Although I think, he could be a good tackle. I think he could be a really, really good guard. I just love the power presence that he has. Technically sound, so on and so forth. As you talked about, he struggles with the guys, those shifty, bendy speed rushers off the edge. He won't have to deal with that as much, but on the inside, but strong hands, strong grip, good anchor. For me, he's kind of built in that power mode to play interior offensive line. Will Campbell's going to be the pick.
No, I love it for Chicago. I think coming into this draft cycle, if someone had said, "Hey, Will Campbell's going to fall out of the top 10 and end up in the 11th," they would have thought you're crazy. But at this point, I think 11 might be his ceiling.
Yeah,
just because of the questions at guard. I think his measurements at the combine with that arm length are going to be huge. But
yeah,
it's.
I think if he gets over 33 inches, if he's 33 and a half, 33 and a quarter, something like that, he'll be on more boards as a tackle, and that could push him up into the top 10. If he tests out of this world athletically, which I'm not necessarily expecting, but if he does, that could push him up the board. But this is a perfect fit for me, man. You just spent number 1 overall in Caleb. Protect him, right? Got Darnell Wright on the right side, a right side that had Darnell Wright and Will Campbell. Like, sign me up for that, man.
No, absolutely, I agree. So I'm on the clock here with Miami, and obviously Will Campbell going the pick before is just a disaster, just because of the simple fact that I don't have another first round grade on any left tackle in this class. It's mostly early second guys, and my only other first round grades on a right tackle, which if you're picking here at 12, you don't necessarily want to spend that on a guy who may play right tackle, may play right guard. So I'm going to flip the script. And Miami's next biggest needs for me is just defensive back help. The safety position is a concern. The cornerback position is a concern. So I'm going to take a guy that can potentially play both at the next level, and I think is just an athletic nightmare in that defensive backfield. It's going to be Malachi Starks from Georgia. And in this scenario, I'm drafting him to play safety and some nickel corner packages as well. With, I believe, Javon Hollins in the last year of his deal, this would be a perfect replacement for them here at pick 12.
Yeah. I mean, I don't hate it. Javon Holland probably going to be a cap casualty. You need somebody that can, like you said, play that star that can come up in the box and man up in the slot at sometimes, can play the two posts, can play the single high. Malachi Starks can do it all, man. He's a really good player. So I don't have any problems with that. Dallas is interesting because Dallas seems to be the Ashton Genty landing place for a lot of prognosticators, but obviously he's off the board. Their run defense has been absolutely atrocious this year. Yeah. It's been awful. But I don't know, I don't know how you feel about him. Personally, I'm not necessarily, I don't think Kenneth Grant is worth the top half of the first round pick. Derek Harmon and Shamar Stewart are other guys that I like, but it's probably a little too rich for them as well. If I'm thinking true run stuffer, like try to fix that run defense, to me, it's probably Kenneth Grant. It's probably Alfred Collins from Texas, and this is just too rich for that. So, I'm going to stream another way.
Okay.
I'm going to assume that that we've probably unfortunately seen the last of Zach Martin here, right? So you have Zach Martin, you have Terrence Steele on the right side of that offensive line. Terrence Steele signed to a long-term contract last year, hasn't lived up to it. Zach Martin might retire. I don't know what else they have on the interior of that offensive line for depth. I mean, I know they spent the first last year on Tyler Guyton. He's been very, very up and down at left tackle. They got Tyler Smith, who I think is all world. They're a team that needs to protect Dak. They're a team that always builds through the trenches. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take Ariante Ursary for him. I think Ursary. I think Ursary is a absolutely mauler on the run. I think he absolutely has the length and the chops and the footwork to hang at right tackle. But even in the interim, if you wanted to start him at right guard and pop him in, eventually after you make a decision or when Terrence Steele's contract comes up or is at a point where you can cut it and then bounce him outside. Similar to what they did with Tyron Smith, right? They drafted Tyron Smith and they played him in at guard for a year before they kicked him outside. And, soon 5 years from now, he'll probably be in the Hall of Fame. Am I saying Ariante Ursaray's Tyron Smith? I'm not, but I'm looking at the tendencies and the trends that Dallas has done and drafted and how important to them the trenches are. I would love to take a run stuffing, one tech here, but the value is just not there for me. I'm going to go replace Zach Martin, and with the hopes, at worst, I'm replacing Zach Martin. At best, I have my right tackle of the future in Ursary.
No, I think that's a great pick for Dallas. I think obviously Genty is the 1A. The only other conversation you could maybe have is at wide receiver if you want to get a running mate for CeeDee Lamb. But I mean, the next guys on my board, I have my guy that I have a first round grade on, but the draft community is not as high on, and I'll save that for a little later in the show. But I think Ursary's a really good pick here. If I'm taking Ursary here at 13, I would flip the script a little bit. I would put Ursary at left tackle, and I would slide Guyton into either right guard if Martin does walk, or if he doesn't, then I'm moving him to right tackle and moving Martin inside, or moving Steele inside, excuse me.
Yeah.
And then now I have two young rookie tackles that I can now not have to worry about that position for the next 4 or 5 years. But I think this is a perfect fit for them.
Yeah, and that offensive line, I mean, I think Tyler Smith, I think, is phenomenal. I think he can last as the left tackle of the future, even if you wanted to move Guyton around, maybe move him to the right side or move him inside. At worst, you have guys along, both guard and tackle spots that are versatile, and you have Cooper Beebe that's holding down the pivot right there at center for the next, hopefully 8 years. So, They addressed the offensive line early and often, and I think this pick here makes sense for me. Leaves me up here with San Francisco. Ursary is a pick that I like for them a lot as well. Do I want to go?
Yeah.
Do I want to go? Yeah, this is an interesting one, and I'm going to talk this one out real quick. Tackle for me makes sense, right? Yes. Colt McKivitz has been pretty bad. Trent Williams is just getting older. I know they re-signed him, but you're going to have to get another guy in here at some point to play. So do you take a guy like Kelvin Banks here and kind of let him play right before obviously being the heir apparent to left tackle? Kelvin Banks is another one of those guys who's I got to say his film was good. Not great. It wasn't very impressive physically. I think he's very impressive.
Yep.
He had a lot of games where he struggled a lot more than a lot of people like to talk about. I think he has, he's built for that power. He wins with leverage. He's light on his feet for a guy who's 325 pounds. But technically I think there's a lot of improvement that needs to be done.
Yep.
His hands are too wide, a little too lungy, a little too off balance at times for me. Stuff that could be coached, a coach. It's kind of that moldable ball of clay, if you will.
Right.
But a guy that's probably going to come in and hit some road bumps. He could be a penalty waiting to happen.
Mhm.
So that's where I stand with Calvin Banks. Josh Simmons is another guy I know that people are very high on. Full disclosure, I haven't gotten to see a lot of Josh Simmons. Obviously, he was injured this year, and a patella tendon injury is really tough to come. It's really tough to come back from. And is it worth a top half of the first round pick here? It's probably not. I think I talked myself into it. I could go corner here also. I really like Benjamin Morrison in this fit.
Mhm.
That in this defense, maybe playing next to Demondre Lenore, because I don't know
Yep.
what's going on with Shadarius Ward. But again, cornerback is deep. I'm going to go ahead and take Kelvin Banks, and he'll play on the right side for now, and eventually be your heir apparent to Trent Williams on the left side. I'm not going to
Right.
think about it too much longer.
Right, and it's going to be a little bit spicy for some of your viewers, but I am low on Kelvin Banks. He is in the middle of my second round.
Yeah,
he is light on his feet, but man, there are some serious concerns. His hands are too wide, like you said. There's leverage concerns. There's also times in his pass protection sets where it looks like his feet are just concrete blocks and he can't move them to keep up. He would be a great guard. Do not get me wrong. He's like Will Campbell in that same thing. Great guard. I just don't know if I can trust him at either tackle spot.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I'm hoping that I agree with you in the sense that I also don't have a first round pick on him.
Mm-hmm.
There's going to be guys, and listen, there's going to be a handful of guys from this point on that I don't have first round grades on. Like I said, I only have 11 or 12 of them right now. So from this point on, there's going to be guys, and for most boards, most NFL boards, they might not even have that many. They only have 8 or 9. So there's going to be guys that you're trying to match up traits and positional need with where you're at. So that's why I think Banks or said tackle. If Simmons is, listen, I can't take a guy who had to have a complete patella tendon repair here in the top half of the first round. I just can't do it.
No.
So to me, the next best available pick is Banks. So I hear you. You're up with the Colts. I'm curious to see where this one's going.
So the biggest thing for Indianapolis that they love out of their picks is athleticism. It's athletic ability, right? So that's the first part. The second part is you need to get a security blanket for Anthony Richardson as a guy over the middle. They're piecing it together with the guys like Mo Alley Cox from Virginia and Kylan Granson. So in this spot, I'm going to take a guy who some folks have as tight end 1. I have him as tight end 1A because I've got another guy at tight end that I really love. But it's Tyler Warren from Penn State. I mean, we talked about him before the show kicked off, but 6'6", 265. He's going to test through the roof at the combine. This is just going to be a guy that, you can use him in a multitude of facets. You could use him as your tight end. You could use him as a fullback. You could use him as a running back. He's a converted quarterback. So you could even have him on tush push 4th and 1s, take those quarterback snaps that you don't want to put Anthony Richardson through. So I think this is just a perfect prospect to team fit here at 15 for Indianapolis.
Yeah, I got no problems with that. Tyler Warren's my tight end 1. I've seen Colston Loveland also, kind of paired up with Indianapolis here a lot. I don't know, Colston Loveland this year was kind of an anomaly because the Michigan offense was so bad. So if you're just like a paper reader or a stats guy, you're looking at him and you're like, wow, he had a really down year. And I don't think he got worse. I just think his situation around him got worse. So yeah, listen, I'm not going to argue with Tyler Warren. He's going to be one of those 9.4 RAS score guys, and like you said, Indianapolis is all over those guys. So leaves me on the board for the next couple. Yeah. Right? Oof, I got a bunch of them coming up here.
You got a run here going.
Yeah. So I'm up with I'm up with.
So you've got Tampa Bay.
I got Tampa Bay. So everyone kind of wants a mock and edge to them. I get it. You got to replace Joe Tryon Shrianko.
Mhm.
They did draft Chris Braswell last year in the
Yep.
second round. I know he's kind of a little parallel to, he's that power rusher, kind of like Yaya Diaby.
Mhm. Yep.
So do you want to bring in somebody who gives you a little bit something different? If you do, maybe this is the James Pierce landing spot. I think they could use help in the defensive backfield as well. There's plenty of cornerbacks here.
Mhm.
I think you can go that way. I think they could use another wide receiver as well.
Yep.
I just don't know what's going on with. I mean, Mike Evans he signed a long-term contract, but even though he signed for the next 3 years, he's in the twilight of his career, right? Chris Godwin is probably going to walk. I love Jalen McMillan out of Washington last year. I think he's their slot man of the future, so I have no problem with
Mhm.
that. They got Trey Palmer from Nebraska a couple years ago. He's your stretch, the stretch field kind of guy. So I know what I'm going to do here, and I'm going to probably go a little bit off the beaten path for
Mhm.
this one. Um, and I'm going to. Oh man, do I want to do that? I'm trying to think here. All right, and I'm going to talk this out again. I'm going to just talk this through.
Yeah.
I would love to get another big body receiver. I'd love to bring in. Is this the spot where you bring in Trey Harris? Is Trey Harris too much like Mike Evans? He'd be a great Mike Evans replacement, but is it? Are you going to be able to get him on the field with Mike Evans and Jalen McMillan? I don't know. This might be a little bit too rich for Trey Harris as well.
Mhm.
Um, I might just kind of go back and try to re-image or try to replace Chris Godwin. And in doing that, I'm going
Mhm.
to take Isaiah Bond for them.
Ooh.
Body type, skill set, route running ability, speed. If he can develop into what prime Chris Godwin is, I think they're gonna. I think that they're going to be absolutely in love with this pick down in Tampa Bay.
Yep, absolutely. I compare Isaiah Bond to Jordan Addison when
Yeah.
Addison was at USC, and I think if you get him there to run alongside Mike Evans, I think you're right. I think edge is overblown for them. I think their biggest needs are corner and wide receiver. And for Tampa, the question was always either Siobhan Revel or Isaiah Bond, because you could go in either way, and I don't think anybody would fault you for it. But I think Bond for Tampa Bay is a matchup that people are not talking enough about,
Mm-hmm.
and we're probably going to see it as we get closer to April. A lot of pundits like you and me start mocking it to Tampa Bay.
Yeah, it's a perfect fit. He plays the boundary. Mike Evans plays the boundary. He's the X, and you put Bond out as the Z. McMillan
Mhm.
in the slot, and I think you're in good shape. Cade Otton has really taken a step up here.
Mhm.
As a viable threat. They want to run the ball. They got two good running backs. They got Baker Mayfield's playing good ball. Sorry to my apologies. Thoughts and prayers to you Browns fans.
We understand it. He was, and even by his own admission, he needed to get bounced around the league to push himself to get to where he is now. He was never going to do that here in our factory of sadness, but we appreciate the apologies.
Yeah. And I'm back up with the Rams. I know exactly what I'm doing here. And this is I don't think it first off, I don't think it's crazy. But it's probably going to be a little bit different because um there's only tackles and cornerbacks that are ever taken for the Rams. And I'm not
Yeah.
going to go either. Like I said, if Josh Simmons ends up being the pick here, it would make sense for me. I have no
Yeah.
problem with that. If your next best corner, whether it's Siobhan Ravel, whether it's Benjamin Morrison, whoever your next corner is, if it's your next corner off the board, that's fine. I think that they're preparing for life after Matt Stafford. You put
Ooh.
Jalen Milroe, who I think is a
Ooh.
phenomenal athlete with insane arm talent. Now you talked about Dante Culpepper. I think this,
Mhm.
I think this is a really good comp. I think he's got a little bit of Dante Culpepper. I think he's got a little bit of Jordan Love coming out of college. That huge
Mhm.
cannon, but doesn't know how to play quarterback all that well. You
Yep.
put him in the brain trust with Sean McVay and Michael Floor over there in the Rams, and you say, listen, there's no pressure right now. You sit
Right.
back, you relax, you learn. Maybe it's a year, maybe it's 2 years, whatever it is, but you're now bridging your heir apparent to Matt Stafford, and you got a guy that McVay is going to figure out how to really maximize. He's going to help him pick up those little intricacies and little nuances that Milrow misses. The pre-snap reads, the process, and the getting through his progressions, not looking for his first read and running. And help him become a quarterback. Less athlete, more quarterback. But
Right.
let's not get it twisted. Sean McVay is going to love his athleticism. Sean McVay wants to run the ball first and foremost, right? So to me, and like I said, I don't think it's a crazy pick. I swear to you, I don't.
No.
I just think that everyone is getting so used to hearing a tackle or cornerback taken for the Rams, and no one's really talking about what happens post Matt Stafford. Now, listen, maybe McVay doesn't care because maybe McVay hangs it up and goes into the booth by that point. It doesn't matter.
Right.
But I can't assume that. I'm going to assume that they're preparing for life after Stafford, and Jalen Milrow is going to be the pick.
No, I 100% agree with you. I think quarterback has to be a conversation here at 17. Granted, I only have 2 first-round grades on guys in Wards and Sanders, but my next 2 guys off my big board are Garrett Nussmeier and Jalen Milrow.
Yeah.
I prefer Nussmeier just a little bit in McVay's offense. I think he would do very well, but you can't fault Milrow either, especially when you talk about RPOs with Kyron Williams. That's just that NFC West defenses are gonna have a field day trying to keep up with that.
And I love the Nussmeier call and the fit here with the Rams. I just really, really think that he goes back to school. So to me, it wasn't even he's only got 9 starts under his belt. To me, it wasn't even a question, but I get it. If he declares, that's a discussion that you can be had. Like, which one do you think is the better fit? Which one do you think has a better upside? Because, both of them can sling it. Right. I don't know if anyone throws a better deep ball in college right now than Jalen Milrow. Though that's for dang sure. So
right.
I'm up here with the Cardinals. Shouldn't be that hard for me. I think this is a comfortable landing spot to plug up the interior with Kenneth Grant. Give that run defense a little bit of love. For a big guy, he's very, very athletic, and I just love how he just devours and eats up space and eats up the double teams. And can really be a menace in the run game. And for a big guy, he moves very well. So it's not that he can't get at the passer. He's not Mason Graham in terms of his pass rush abilities, but he can hold his own. Kenneth Grant right here for me is perfect fit. It's exactly what that defense needs, is that big body up front. That settle down and play the 0 or the 1 tech.
Yeah, no, I'm a little bit lower on Kenneth Grant. I think he's probably in that mid round 2 range, but I can't fault it. Arizona needs defensive interior help, and the problem is there's a lot of guys at the top of my defensive tackle board that have some question marks. Deion Walker in his conditioning, Dante Corleone in his health, Tyleek Williams if he's ever going to develop any sort of a pass rush toolbox, right? So this is kind of a take your flavor of the month kind of guy, and I wouldn't fault Arizona for going Kenneth Grant here.
Yeah. It leaves me on the clock here with the Falcons. And again, to me, it's a no-brainer. This is an edge rusher. It just depends if I want that bigger body power rusher or if I want to go with, the true speed guy. Now, you know what? I think you can make a fair argument either way. I really do. Yeah. But I'm looking at their, when you look at their pass rush right now, Matthew Judon's on a 1-year contract, right?
Yep.
I know they're playing Lorenzo Carter. I don't know how much legs he really has under him, or if he's just kind of that fill-in while everyone's, pretty much injured. Man, I didn't realize that they had so many injuries on that team. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and take a guy. They got Arnold Ebiketie, who's more of a power rusher. Lost a little bit of playing time behind Judon. Give me, again, not my favorite edge in the class, but one of my favorite fits for what I think the Falcons need, and that's a guy that can just get at the pass rusher. He's improved. Slow start this year in college at Tennessee, but James Pierce has really picked it up. Again, there's not many guys who, if you ask to get at the pass rusher, and win consistently in this draft, such as that are as good at it as both Abdul Carter and James Pierce. Again, I don't know if he's a 3-down guy. It's a little light in the ass, if you ask me. But I think he'll serve a purpose and help a team get pressure and attack the quarterback from the outside, something that they haven't been able to do all year long. And his skill set is something different than what's on that defense. So, again, not my favorite guy. Scouting's Nick Scorton's my edge 2 in the class. I'm surprised he's still here. I'm looking for the fit more so for the Falcons here in James Pierce.
Right. No, I think that's it's a perfect fit. Like when we talk J&T with Dallas, we talk James Pierce with the Falcons. They're going to want that athletic pass rusher who's got a very high ceiling. He's still got to put it together, especially with setting the edge in the run game. Yes. But this is a guy that the sky is the limit if you can unlock his pass rush toolbox at the next level.
And leave me up with Seattle. I got 2 more picks before I take a little break, and you go on your run.
Right.
Seattle's a good team. This is an interesting spot. I think that this could be, if Nussmeier comes out, that this could be a Nussmeier landing spot. I think this could be a Jalen Milroe landing spot as well. But I'm gonna veer off of the quarterback, and I'm gonna take a guy. Maybe you think this is a little rich for him. I don't necessarily personally. I don't ever look at what these rankings say here in the in the PFF rankings, because that's just
right.
That's just Tampa Bay Trey's ratings himself. Then they don't really matter. But I'm going to take a guy that I think is an absolute stud on the offensive line. He's been arguably the best, if not one of the best, if not the best left tackle in all college football. However, with sub 32-inch arms, there's no chance he stays at tackle. Give me Wyatt Milam. And I'll plug him right in at left guard. Laken Tomlinson's on a 1-year deal. I know that they got Christian Haynes and what is the other guy? The big guy from Utah. Why can't I think of his name? Lamua. Sioti Lamua from Utah last year. Those guys are going to battle out for the right guard. You need a replacement for left guard. Wyatt Milam is that guy. He is that dog. Hasn't let up a pressure in a season and a half playing left tackle. Power profile for days. I think he's got the size. Like I said, I think he's got the strength. I think he's got the anchor. He's going to be a really dominant interior lineman in the NFL in very short time. I think he's a guy, one of the few in this class, that I think is truly plug and play, just not at left tackle. But you plug him in at left. You plug him in at left guard. He's your left guard for the next 12 years. Laken Tomlinson, like I said, 1-year deal. Thanks for your service. Now beat it. Wyatt Milam's going to be the pick here.
No, I love that pick. I comped him to like a Jared Valdir, a guy who's a big body tackle but can slide inside better. I think Milam is underrated in the community and in draft media as a whole, just because he's not going to play left tackle, and everybody's looking for that. Who's going to play top left tackle? Milam is a guy you plug at guard, and you have your guard problem solved for at least the next 7 to 10 years.
Yeah, and also he's he's not the top athlete. Like, he's not gonna blow people out with his RAS score or anything like that. So I think that move to inside is going to happen one way or another. I think his athletic ceiling being kind of limited might push him down a little bit, maybe into the second round. I wouldn't be surprised, but for me, there's nobody else on this board, outside of, I think you can argue. I think you can argue maybe Tyler Booker that would fit and plug and play as well as Wyatt Milam would at guard for Seattle. So that's a pick. Wyatt Milam's going to be pick. I'm up with Washington. No hesitation here. It's Nick Scorton. I think you can make an argument. I think you can make an argument for tackle if you want to bring in Josh Simmons. I think you can make an argument for defensive back, whether you want to bring in, a Siobhan Ravel or a Benjamin Morrison or something like that. But they still, remember, 2 years ago, they traded both of their starting defensive ends. They're still trying to replace it. Give me a guy like Nick Scorton on that defense. I think he can, really do a lot for a big guy, big, strong guy at almost what, 290 pounds, 280 some
Yeah.
odd pounds.
Yeah.
Sets the edge, plays the run very well, but has a really good pass rush bag in him and counter moves for days. I don't know if he'll ever be a double-digit sack guy, but he's going to be a guy similar to Carl Lawson, who I think is going to get a lot, cause a lot of havoc in the backfield, get a lot of pressure, so on and so forth. Something that the Washington defense needs, immensely. So, Nick Scorton's the pick, and you're
No.
up with the Texans.
No, I love the Scorton pick. He's my edge one right now.
Yeah.
Obviously, if Carter blows up, it's going to change everything. But he's a Cam Jordan type of guy, big body edge rusher. He's going to, if he's still here at 21, I think Washington has to just fall in love with it. So Houston Texans at 22, obviously one of the biggest needs that everybody's mocking them is running back. I don't think there's a second running back that goes in this first round. So now I'm going to look in two spots. And the first one would be guard, obviously. And there's a guard that I'm in love with on the board in Savanea that I think could be a great fit for them. And then also I'm going to flip to defensive interior. I mean, Mario Edwards Jr. is in the final year of his deal. Fatakusi's in the final year of his deal. So do they look at defensive tackle? I'm going to go defensive tackle here. And I am going to go with a guy that I think people are not currently high on right now, that PFF's probably going to have a little bit lower. But this guy's 6'5", 300 pounds, can play all parts of the defensive line. He can play interior. He can play outside. It's Shamar Turner from Texas A&M. I've compared him to Vinny Curry of the olden day Philadelphia Eagles. This is a guy that's got a very deep pass rush bag on the inside and the outside. You can have him play any spot. You could even have him stand up as a pass rusher in, certain 4-3, even 5-2 schemes if you wanted to. But I think the draft committee as a whole is not as high on him as I am. But this is a guy I think that's going to find his way in the first round come April.
Yeah, no, he's a great player. And again, I'm not questioning your pick, but by watching so much Houston this year, and you just watching poor CJ Stroud run for his life, like I think the Houston fans that I know would absolutely have a conniption if they don't pick somebody along that offensive line. But you can't go wrong. You keep a guy like Turner, like you said, who has that inside-outside versatility, big body, strong. You keep him home. I think it's a great pick. And you're back up with Denver.
I'm back up with Denver. So this is a Denver pick that I've been mocking here in my last couple of mocks, and it's a sneaky pick. So obviously I'm looking at wide receiver to pair with Sutton. So people think probably I'm going with a big body X receiver, maybe like a guy like Io Manor, who's one of my guys of this class, and I have a first round grade on. But I'm going to flip the script. I'm going to go with a slot guy who's been very productive for a top quarterback in this class. I'm going to go Xavier Restrepo from Miami. This is a Sean Payton guy who's going to be used in a lot of screens, a lot of bubbles, a lot of slants. You give him the ball and watch him make magic happen. He's not going to play on the boundaries, so Denver's going to have to figure that out either by someone in their current room, whether it's Troy Franklin, whether it's Vele, or something like that. But this is a very good, sneaky first-round selection for Denver.
Okay, I love it. And listen, they don't really have a guy like Restrepo on the roster, right? Like you talked about Troy Franklin and Mims. They're more of your field stretchers. Vele, I don't even know what Vele's strengths really are in terms of his skill set. And I listen, it's a pick that I haven't seen. This might be a little rich for Restrepo, but like you said, if if you find a fit for not only for the scheme and he would do wonders with Peyton in there. He could be a real weapon. So I love it. I love thinking outside the box, man. And I love pairing these guys, different pairings just to make you think once in a while. And that's
Yeah.
exactly what you just did. So you're up with Baltimore here. You got two more. You got Baltimore and Chargers before I go.
All right. So Baltimore, everybody's always talking about. Obviously, you look at left tackle. If Stanley walks, McCary's left tackle, his deal is up. So left tackle's a concern. Left guard's a concern. Right guard. The whole offensive line as a whole is a concern. Eh, But the question then becomes, do you want to take a guy? Obviously, Ursay's off the board. Obviously, Milam's off the board. So now you're looking at a guy like Josh Simmons with that patella issue. I don't know if he's going to even go in this first round. There are a couple of guys that I like that are probably a little too rich here, but I'll throw them out for the draft community so they can know about them. From Nando Carmona from Arkansas, a big body left tackle, plays a lot like Andrew Thomas for the New York Giants. Ozzie Trapillo, 6'9", right tackle for Boston College, big body, Mike McGlinchey type of tackle. So now with that off the board, and if I'm Baltimore, my next biggest need is corner, just because I'm not confident in Marlon Humphrey's ability to return. And there's some good corners on this board.
Yeah.
That being said, I'm going to go with the guy who's my cornerback 3, and I think is a first round grade, and it's Ben Morrison from Notre Dame. I mean, he's great in all forms, man coverage, zone coverage. The hip injury is a little concerning for me just because it seems like it was a little more serious than Notre Dame let on. But this is a guy we talked about. I see him as a top 10 grade before the injury occurred. So to get him here at 24 is just excellent value.
Yeah. Again, another guy I think might end up leaning to go back to school just to show that he's healthy, because if he does and he continues to produce at the elite level like he was pre-injury, you're talking top 10 guy easy next year, right? I mean, there's not many other corners that are that off the top of my head that I'd probably put ahead of him. So, yeah, I thought about him hard for Washington at 21. But yeah, I love it. And then you go, listen, between him and Wiggins, you went back-to-back corners in the first round, and hopefully you found your guys, whether they both play on the outside or whether Wiggins ends up, taking over from Marlon Humphrey and being more of a slot guy. However it works out, I think you're good. You're young. You've really strengthened that defensive backfield there. You already got, two really good young safeties in there. So, yeah, I love the pick for Morrison here.
Yeah, it's a slam dunk home run. I think obviously if Ursay or Milam falls, it's a different conversation. But with the tackles on the board that's there, it's just not even an option. And we go to the other Harbaugh, Chargers at 25, and everybody seems to be mocking Loveland here just because of the mission connection, the tight end connection. Khalil Mack's a free agent. This team is going to lose some pass rushing snaps. It's going to lose some edge snaps. So there's two guys here that I think could be good fits. One, I have a first round grade on. The other one's just right outside the first round. And I'm going to go with a guy very lengthy, more of a power rusher than a finesse rusher. But I've compared him to Aiden Hutchinson in terms of his overall play. And it's Landon Jackson from Arkansas. This guy is going to take all of Khalil Mack's snaps, and this could be, and this is probably lofty, but this could be a double-digit sack as a rookie. He is that good. He is that good as a pass rusher. I'd love to see him work on his run defense just a little bit more, but I mean, the length, you can't teach it. 6'7", 280, but he moves like he's 6'5", 240 pounds. He's just blowing by people. We don't hear enough about him because he's at Arkansas. But I think the Chargers have to go edge in this first round and let Mack walk it just with his age overall.
Yeah. I love the way you talked that out, because I wasn't thinking about an edge rusher there. I wasn't necessarily thinking Loveland either. I know a lot of people love that pairing. I was thinking more on the defensive interior, but listen, Landon Jackson's 275 pounds. There's nothing that says that he can't move inside in some, in some NASCAR packages when you have two true speed rushers on the outside and you have him rush from over the guard. So again, it's a fit that I haven't seen, but as we talk it out, it completely makes sense to me. So I love it. Landon Jackson's so good. I had him I had him as a top 50 player last year.
Yeah.
I have him a little bit higher. I have him kind of like on that fringe 1, 2. So I won't have an overall ranking yet, but he definitely was a top 50 player
Right.
for me last year, and I think that's where he'll land this year. And leaves me up on the clock with Packers. I think that there's really three ways you can go here, right? Kenny Clark's not getting any younger. They drafted Carl Brooks late as a day 3 guy
Yeah.
2 years ago. Who he's a guy I absolutely loved. Coming out of Bowling Green, he was one of my guys. He was my Senior Bowl, my Senior Bowl infatuation. So I think you can probably add another body in there because I don't know if you want to go strictly with Carl Brooks as your your sole interior guy. He is a little bit smaller of frame, so you could go for a big body here. So I don't know if it's the biggest need. I just keep seeing this offensive line, and you watch Sean Ryan struggle a little bit. I've never been a big Rashid Walker fan, even though I thought he had a good game yesterday.
Yep.
Never a fan. And this is a spot where I think you could kind of take somebody, and even if they don't come in and start right from day one, they can develop. They spent the high pick last year, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, Jordan Morgan,
Yeah.
who really is that, he's that right guard. You got Elgin Jenkins on the left side. So I'm going to go ahead and take Josh Simmons here. This is the spot where I think I'm comfortable taking him off the board. Listen, he doesn't have to, if nothing more, he comes in and he competes with either Zach Tom or Rashid Walker, and the three of them compete and two of them end up at the tackle spots. I think Josh Simmons is probably better suited to play right side. The problem is I think Zach Tom's probably best suited to be right side as well, and they might be the two best tackles. So they're going to have to figure it out. One of them's going to have to move over to the left unless Rashid Walker takes a fourth year step up and decides that he's really going to solidify himself as the left tackle of the future, which I don't see happening. Again, this is a spot where a good team can just take some depth and let a guy develop. And you have Josh Simmons coming off that injury. Maybe you don't have to rush him to play. Maybe you can kind of play the slow game with him, and you have guys like him and Jenkins and Zach Tom and Jordan Morgan, solidifying and protecting for Jordan Love for the next 6-7 years. So the value is too good for me to let up. Yeah, they had other needs. You could have taken a cornerback. You could have taken a defensive interior, but I'll be fine filling those spots later. I don't know if I'm going to find a guy with the upside and the guy who can stick at tackle here, like Josh Simmons. So that's going to be the pick. And you were up, my friend, with Pittsburgh.
I love it. I love the Josh Simmons pick. For Pittsburgh, it boils down to two things. Number one is, do you feel confident that Justin Fields is your guy of the future? Because Russ is not. Russ is up there in years. You're going to get maybe another 1 or 2 year deal. Maybe you sign him to a 1 year deal and try it again next year. This would be a Milrow landing spot if Milrow isn't on the board, isn't already off the board, which he did here go to the LA Rams. That being said, I'm not going to force Nussmeier here because I don't think the Nussmeier Pittsburgh fit is just a great fit. So I'm looking at two other positions. I'm looking at wide receiver, obviously, because they've got Mike Williams as a free agent. They've got a couple other guys. Gnowrick's a free agent. Scott Miller. There's going to be some free agents in this wide receiver room. The problem is with Pickens on one side, do you really want to go with another big body on the outside on the other side? You'd like to have more of a speedster guy. I just don't know if there's really one here. Same thing with tackle. Obviously, they attacked it early on, but there's still some holes at left tackle that you have question marks on, especially, if a guy like Dan Miller walks, if Calvin Anderson walks. The fun part is obviously Dante Jackson is also a free agent in that defensive backfield. I'm going to get a little creative here, and I'm going to go with a guy opposite Joey Porter Jr. that I think if he is healthy, he is probably cornerback number 4 in this class, and I compare his play style to Richard Sherman. I'm going to go Siobhan Revel from ECU, and I'm going to say Joey Porter on one side, Siobhan Revel on the other, and you figure out how to try to pass the ball against this Pittsburgh defense. Throw TJ Watt in front of it, and good luck playing defense against any AFC North opponent.
Yeah, yeah. Listen, I think that the fit is good. I think the player's great. Yeah, you want to see him come back healthy from ACL, but ACL tears aren't what they used to be. Even if it's a little bit of a slower roll for him, I think he's going to be full speed by the time camp comes. He's not going to be pressed into matching up against teams number ones right away because you have Joey Porter there. So even if it's a slower roll into 25, you get a full, a full healthy Siobhan Revel in 2026, and picking him here at 27 could end up being the steal of the first round when it's all said and done. So I love the pick. I'm up with the Vikings. And, I think Siobhan Revel would have been an ideal player right here. He was a guy I was kind of honing in on. A lot of zone tendencies over there. First off, is the coaching staff gonna stay together, right? Is Flores gonna stay? Is he gonna get a head coaching job? Somebody gonna roll the dice on him? He's done wonders. I think he's really, really earned himself an opportunity. If he can put all that lawsuit NFL stuff, I think he's really earned himself an opportunity to get another shot to be a head coach. I think he's done phenomenal things with this defense. He's made guys, he's made players out of Byron Murphy and Cam Bynum that nobody else could. So kudos to him. But I am going to stick on the defensive side of the ball. I am going to stick in the defensive backfield. I would have taken Siobhan Revel, but I think there's another guy here that fits that style. He plays like his ass is on fire. Arguably the best, defensive cornerback against the run on the boundary. I think he'll find his home is probably more inside. Put him, in that slot corner, free safety kind of role. That's Jahdae Barron out of Texas.
Love it.
Yeah, it's a perfect fit for Flores defense. And like I said, you can play him at nickel. He could be your starting nickel. You can play him, at safety if you wanted to roll big nickel and roll 3 safeties out there. It just gives you a lot of opportunity. He can, his run fits are ridiculously good. He's played some star backer. He then this year went outside and played outside and locked it up. Now, I don't know if he has the long speed to really hang outside. Plus, being sub 6 feet tall, he's going to have some struggles. But man, he plays like an animal. Like his hair's on fire, supports the run as good as a defensive back I've seen in a couple years. And like I said, it's just a versatile chess piece for a Brian Flores offense. Jahdae Barron's going to be the pick.
I love it because the other thing is that, and people haven't talked about this, is Jahdae Barron's listed as a corner, but he played safety last year and he did it really well. Yeah. So this is a guy you could put corner, you could put safety, you could put him in the nickel, you find a spot for him somewhere in a defensive backfield. You could even rush him off the edge in quarterback blitz scenarios if you wanted to do that as well, and he'll get after the quarterback just as well. I love it for Minnesota, even if Flores stays. Yeah.
Well, stays or goes. I think. I think you need a nickel back there. Stays or goes. If he goes, guys like Cam Bynum could follow him. Right. So that'll open up a free safety spot. And I think, like Barron can slide right into there as well. So, listen, I don't know if I have to think too long and too hard on this one. I mean, it's Philadelphia. So, 2 things, right? It's probably going to be in the trenches. That's where they like, and it's probably going to be from the University of Georgia.
Yep.
So I don't have to think.
Yeah. There's 3 constants. There's 3 constants in life: death, taxes, and the Philadelphia Eagles drafting a Georgia Bulldog in the first round. Those are the 3 things you've got.
Yeah, and if I'm being completely honest with you, Mikael Williams isn't my favorite edge.
Mhm.
I think I think there's still a lot of meat. He leaves a lot of meat on the bone when it comes to, his pass rush skill set. Um, I don't know if he's the best mover, but he plays strong. He plays violent. He's got that build. He's got a quick first step. I think he's going to be someone that gets better as time goes on. The good thing is that he doesn't have to walk in there and be the best you know, uh, pass rushing edge rusher, in the league or not in the league, but on the team, because there's still some depth there. He can kind of cut in and take his medicine. He can stay behind an Olin Smith. He can stay behind a Josh Sweat if he comes back. They have Bryce Huff that they took from the Jets, or they signed from the Jets last year. So there's still some guys in there. But Mikael Williams for me is another piece that just fits exactly. When you think Eagles, you match up all these things. Trenches, versatility, University of Georgia.
Yep.
Mikael Williams is going to be the pick.
Love it. This is a guy I think he could honestly go higher. He's like that Abdul Carter type that if he gets to the combine and tests out of his mind, where 29 is going to be no way he falls out of the top 15. So I think the Eagles getting him here is just excellent value. So, all right. So
you are up with Buffalo, my friend.
I am with Buffalo, and a lot of people have been mocking defensive interior, defensive tackle to Buffalo. They need help on the inside of that defensive line. I'm going to flip the script a little bit.
Okay.
Amari Cooper's a free agent. I don't see Amari Cooper re-signing with Buffalo. I'm not confident in Shakir as a wide receiver on the boundary. I think he'd be a better slot. So now I'm going to look for a boundary wide receiver. I referenced him a little earlier, but there is a guy that I have a first round grade on. He is my guy of this class. It's Alec Iomanner from Stanford. I mean, this guy is 6'3", 210, big body wide receiver. He's very powerful frame. The question is, obviously, he's a redshirt sophomore. Does he even declare this year? I talked about it with a couple people earlier on draft Twitter. We're probably about 70-30 that he comes out. The other 30% he returns to school, and Stanford goes and gets a quarterback from their new GM, Andrew Luck. But I think Buffalo taking a defensive tackle, this defensive tackle class, we talked about it at the kickoff of the episode, it's very deep. They can come back in round 2 and get a guy that's round 1 on some teams' boards. But getting a guy right here at wide receiver, you now have Keon Coleman on one side, Alec Iomanner on the other side, 2 big body X's. Maybe they double dip and get a slot guy, maybe a Ricky White in day 3 and throw him in the slot. And now you have offensive weapons galore for Josh Allen.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if the world is as familiar with Alec Iomanner as they should be, or as they will be come April. He's very, very talented. Like you said, does he risk being a late first round, to the late second round pick, or does he go back and try to increase his volume now that Stanford's going to have, Andrew Luck there? You hope that face of prominence is going to attract some people. Does he come back? Do they try to get a quarterback? And does he come back? Does he enter the portal? Which is very popular. Hell, he can go right up the road next year to Oregon, who's losing all their wide receivers and probably earn himself a top 10 pick coming into 26. But I digress.
Yep.
We don't have to talk about that because he's heading up to Orchard Park, Buffalo, off Orchard Park, New York.
Yeah.
And you are go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. I think if Iomanner does come back and he doesn't go to Stanford, I think another school to watch out for him. Oregon, you hit. Notre Dame's another one. They were in on him when he was coming out from Canada. So, and that's the school we talked about. So I think if he doesn't come back to Stanford, it's Notre Dame. But in this case, he goes to Buffalo. And the last AFC team on the board is the Kansas City Chiefs. And everybody's been talking tight end to them. I am no better than everybody. I'm talking tight end, but I am not talking Colston Loveland. I'm a little bit lower on him than the consensus. He's my tight end 4. I've got a couple of guys ahead of him. One guy that I have ahead of him is a guy that has been lighting it up for his team this year, has lit up top teams like Penn State. He's a guy that, should have been a finalist for the Bolitnikoff in my eyes, but he wasn't, just based on his pure production.
Yeah.
It's Harold Fannin Jr. out of Bowling Green. I mean, we're talking 100 catches, 1,300 yards, 9 touchdowns. This guy, his size concerns are a little bit overknocked at 6'4", 230. So is he really going to be that much of a run blocker as a tight end? But listen, you give Andy Reid a weapon like Harold Fannin Jr., he'll figure it out. And then you've got Kelsey and Fannin Jr. in the short term, and then in the long term, Fannin Jr. takes over. And here we are talking about another, Patrick Mahomes legendary target.
And they also remember. And first off, I love Fannin. I don't know if he's going to be, if NFL teams are going to love him this much, because I think there's going to be some guys that he's just not on the board for. Like he's not everyone's cup of tea. You know what I mean? He's a much bad comp, but if you think Evan Engram, who's with hands,
right,
so and Evan Engram's not everyone's cup of tea. So I think there's an offensive scheme that could do wonders for Harold Fannin, and if you want anyone to drum up that scheme, give it to Andy Reid, right?
Yes,
give it to Andy Reid. Now they also have Gray there that can take Kelsey's inline spot. There they can run more 12 personnel. They're going to have more healthy receivers next year.
Yep.
So I get that. And then I get the pick here. Harold Fannin Jr. I think he leads the nation in reception yards, if I'm not mistaken.
It's either him or it's Nick Nash from San Jose State, but it's 1-2 between those two. And I mean, my comp for Harold Fannin Jr., it's David Njoku. And we all saw what Njoku was at Miami, that athletic tight end. He wasn't he could block, but he wasn't the greatest blocker. That's not why the Browns took him. It was for his pass catching ability. But I think Kansas City is going to go a tight end. And if Fannin Jr.'s there, I think Andy Reid's going to say, give him to me and I'll figure the rest out later.
Yeah. And that leaves me. Last pick of the draft, Detroit Lions. I know where I'm going. I know I'm going to stay on the defensive side of the ball. I think you can make an argument, honestly. If you liked, I think Fannin would have been a great fit here. Not necessarily, but to play the kind of like that big slot. I know they got Amon-Ra St. Brown there, but to me, I don't know if the offense coordinator Ben Johnson's going to be there. This offense could look completely different. But what I do know is they still got a couple holes on that defensive side. So I'm going to go to the edge. And I'm going to end it with a name where I know that you're familiar with and people are now starting to get familiar with. And this might be a little bit of a reach, so you can get at me in the comments if you want. But you think outside of Aiden Hutchinson, you think like that kind of effort that he has and so on and so forth. Like I really like. I'm not picking him here, but I really like Jack Sawyer in this fit as well. But I'm going to go with the guy who I think is has really earned the opportunity to have his name called in the first round. Will he end up here? I'm not sure. I think talent-wise, he is. Give me that twitch. Give me that bend. Give me the guy that has that closing speed, that motor. Even if it's just, even if he's a pass rush specialist start because he needs to put a little bit of mass on that frame. He's a guy that I think is going to develop into a extremely, extremely dangerous pass rusher. And that's exactly what you need opposite of Aiden Hutchinson, right? Take some of the attention away. Adam Marshall, give me Mike Green.
Love it. Absolutely love it. This is a guy, I compare him to Emmanuel Ogbah when Ogbah came out. You hit the nail on the head. This is a pass rush that is like he's like your neighbor's Lamborghini, right? 0 to 60 in 2.5. And I think if the Detroit Lions get him here, now you've got to worry about Mike Green and Aiden Hutchinson. The NFC North offensive tackles are not ready for that in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, and like I said, I think there's a bunch of guys. Like I love Princely Umamielen. I think he could be a good fit. I talked about Sawyer, but none of them have that that get off and that twitch and that bend. Neither of them have that get off and that twitch and that bend that Mike Green has. And listen, at worst, he starts out as a pass rush specialist in that defense, which is already rock solid on a rock solid team. He's a guy that I think if Aaron Glenn's there, will get the most out of. I don't know if Aaron Glenn's going to be there, but again, I digress. That's predicting the future, which I'm not here to do. I'm here to talk first round draft.
Right. And with Mike Green's twitch, there's a high possibility come April, he may be in the top 15 in this class. I know Dane Brugler had him in his top 50, so Dane's been high on him for a minute, and some folks are coming around to him and getting more eyes on him. This is a guy that he could compete for edge 1 for some folks. I know he's in that next tier of edges for me, like right around edge 5. He's in that next tier with, you already hit on the Princely Umamlians, like a LT Overton from Alabama, those types of guys. But I think that's probably the home run swing of the draft if Dan Campbell and Aaron Glenn get Mike Green. Granted, I don't have Aaron Glenn returning to Detroit. I did a best head coach GM fit article over at CadesDraftRoom.com where I picked the Jets' new head coach and GM, and it was Ray Agnew, the current Detroit Lions assistant GM. And then I brought Aaron Glenn home to coach the Jets as, yes, defensive coordinator. You're replacing a defensive coordinator guy, but it's a goodwill gesture. Hey, let's bring home this guy who can turn the Jets around.
Yeah, listen, not my favorite. It wouldn't be my favorite choice. But it does pull at the heartstrings of all the Jets fans, right? You bring somebody home. So but listen, Mike Green in that scheme, no matter who the defensive coordinator is, you pop him and just say your job is go that way, get at the pass rusher. Take some of the attention off of Aiden, because Aiden's going to do his work over there. Like, that's a scary thought for the NFC Central guys, NFC North, excuse me.
So. No, I agree that he and Landon Jackson, based on the fits that we drafted them tonight, that's your defensive rookie of the year conversation right there. Between those two guys.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with that. So, all right, well, that's first round. Listen, a lot of names in a lot of newer names, at least in some of the mocks that I've been doing on my channel in different spots. Jalen Walker may be going a little too high. Guys like Ayumanar and Restrepo and Mike Green and Harold Fannin entering the first round conversation. Shamar Turner. Listen, this is what happens in December, right? We're studying these guys. We know kind of the ins, the outs, the tendencies, and we try to find the fits that we like. And this will probably look completely different come April, but that's okay. The exercise is fun nonetheless. So, Bill, great time. I mean, we flew. We're at an hour and a half already. It didn't seem that long. So that means the conversation went well. So I appreciate you coming on, my friend. One more time, why don't you let everyone know where they can find you?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find me on X at Sparks Scouting. That's where majority of my stuff is going to be. I'm also at X at Draft Detectives as well. A writer and analyst for CadesDraftRoom.com. You can find me there. In addition, Draft Professor on YouTube as a part of the Mrs. Are Relevant podcast. You can find me there as well. Dom, I appreciate you having me on, spending this time tonight going over this first round. And like you said, this could come entirely looking different come April 1st. And maybe it could look the same and we all look crazy, saying, hey, Harold Fannin Jr. is a first round guy. And we get to April and he's a top 15 pick. So that's the fun part about the mock drafts is that we get to talk about guys who we've watched tape over and we poured over the tape. And this is what we would do if we're NFL GMs. And sometimes that's just the fun in it. But I appreciate you having me on tonight.
No, my pleasure. We'll definitely get together again. We got plenty of time before April, so we'll do this again. One more time, folks. Please like, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, do all that stuff so that YouTube algorithm starts to like this channel and this show, and it gets pushed out to the masses. The more help you can give me, the better. I appreciate it. On behalf of my co-host, Bill Sparks, another episode of the Draft Dodgers is done. See you next time.
See you guys.